Please welcome Joshua and Cheryl.
Hey guys. So it's going to be a little loud next door. I'm not going to ask you to compete with them. They have twice as many people in the room. But I'll try to make things interesting and engaging for you guys, because this is a topic, although they're having a lot of fun, this is a topic that is the future. And it can be fun too. So I've written a bunch of books. I wrote Job Searching with Social Media for Dummies. It's come out with its second edition. I love to write. And this whole interest in social media job search started in 2009 when I was laid off for the second time. And I went through the Oregon unemployment system and received my benefits. And I vowed I was never going to do that to myself again, and so I started my own business. So the last 30 days or so, I've been working on a new book. It was going to be a Kindle book, and I've been doing this for a long time, since 2009. So since then, I've interviewed recruiters, successful job seekers. I sit in on LinkedIn calls. I have contacts at all the major networks, so I know what is going to be happening and how that relates to us as career professionals. So I wanted to write a new book, and so this is going to be my third Kindle book. 2 hours a day, I'm writing this thing for the last month, really putting in a lot of elbow grease into this thing. And finally, I launched it on Kindle, and I hit submit. The thing gets published. I go onto my newsletter. I say, hey guys, I just launched a new Kindle book. I'd love for you to take a look at it. It's free until Sunday. Big success. 1,200 people downloaded it in the first couple of hours. It was amazing. And then I get this email. Okay? Indelicate title. I'm not going to buy it. Okay? So you know those times that you shouldn't reply to an email? I replied to his email. And it kind of went something like this. Forgive me. Next time, I'll be more sensitive to your delicate feelings around sucking at LinkedIn. Because that was the title of my book. All right. Now here's the situation. And I think it was a pretty good book, if I might say so myself. But the title obviously didn't appeal to everybody, but it appealed to enough people. It was a successful book. It ranked number 1, 2, and 3 in its categories. It still ranks. It's only been out for a week. Okay, so here's a situation where I couldn't write for everybody, but I wrote to enough people, right? And so this is the theme, one of the themes we're going to talk about today. The theme that you can develop a program for a segment of people, not everybody, but a small segment of people, and really knock it out of the park, right? And then dealing with that change, because clearly this person who thought I was being indelicate was not my audience, and that's okay. And that's okay when we develop programs. We're going to talk about how we developed a program with Work Systems Inc. for WorkSource Portland Metro that was not for everybody, but we still hit it out of the park. The other thing that's going to come up today is dealing with change within a system, within an organization, and a system of organizations, so that we're staying up to date with what's happening outside of that system based on a single principle. And we're going to talk about what that principle is in just a couple of moments. But before we do, I want to ask you a couple of questions. In the last 12 months, raise your hand if you wrote a memo for your office. A memo. One person, 2 people wrote a memo. In the last 12 months, raise your hand if you sent an inter-office mail. A little bit more people did that. In the last 12 months, raise your hand if you wrote a business letter. A letter. A couple of folks. So for those of you who didn't raise your hand, what did you use instead? What did you use instead to communicate? Email, right? Do we all use email? Are you guys awake? Okay. And in the last, let's say 24 hours, on what device did you check your email? Anybody? Just go ahead and shout it out. A mobile device, right? So here we are. So before we go any further,
You already went further.
you like that? Before we go any further with today's presentation, let's have an agreement together. Let's agree that we have gone through a lot of change. Okay? This harkens back to this morning's keynote. We have survived these changes. And we've been okay. Can we all agree to that? Yes. Yes? All right. Because that's exactly what's happened in the world of social media job search. If you think about it, we know that over 90% of recruiters rely on social media in some form. We know this to be a fact. And in fact, we also know that companies want candidates who are social media savvy. She read the slide. They want candidates that are social media savvy. But we have a problem, right? You guys recognize that we have a problem? Because you're here. So our systems aren't designed to monitor and track these kinds of job acquisitions. Okay, our systems are based on centralized job postings through traditional application and ATS review. And then our success is determined based on what? Time to hire. The problem is that most of these jobs that people are getting now come through referral and through social media. Okay? Yet, how many times do we offer formal, standard-based, quality-controlled social media training to our customers? Not very often. This is a problem. This is a problem. They are a problem. Okay, so to compound this problem, so we have one side of the equation is that our customers are not getting this type of career education that they need. The other side of it is that the companies who we partner with as organizations are disappointed in the types of recruits we are sending to them because they either have no online presence or a poor online presence. Thank you, Drew, for the example. Okay, so now as organizations, it becomes harder to attract employer partners into our system because we're not delivering what they consider to be savvy, modern candidates. So raise your hand again if your organization has offered you some kind of professional development for your own career around LinkedIn. No LinkedIn training. You've had a LinkedIn training.
Your workshop is one of the things that they offer.
Okay.
I do teach all this
All right.
myself. I don't.
Yeah.
On my own time.
So on the other side of it, within your organizations, does your organization offer a LinkedIn training for the customer to help them?
Yes,
Yes, we've got one.
I guess social networking is.
that's what it is.
Got 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now, keep your hands raised. So those of you whose organizations have this, now keep your hand raised if that program is quality controlled, developed by a social media expert, and is taught consistently every single time at every single center.
I don't know, it's your program, so.
Then yes. If it's my program, then yes. Then yes. So, but we did have hands go down.
Well, mine didn't.
No, yours didn't because you're, okay.
They're from Portland.
But here's the thing, you guys. We do this for resume. We do this for interview skills. We do this for cover letter. Why are we not doing this for social media skills when we know they're just as important? So what happens is, now this is a systemic problem. What happens is that the staff at the ground level who are interacting with the job seeker, they feel really frustrated because they're getting comments from the customer saying, what can I do about this? I have questions about Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. And now the staff within our organizations, they're feeling a little bit uncomfortable. They don't know how to answer those questions. They've never received training. They don't know how to prescribe a course of action for that customer because one doesn't exist. Okay, so we have a customer service problem. That's what it all comes down to. So today we're going to talk about how WorkSource Portland Metro and their WIB, Work Systems Inc., put together a fully comprehensive, quality-controlled, consistent social media program and how that all came to be and what that looks like today. We're going to talk about that today. So how does that, is there anything else that you would expect for us to cover today? Just want to make sure that we get all the topics in. We good? Okay. So let's start at the highest level. Why social media in the first place? This is a conversation. You're all here, so you're now all dubbed social media advocates. You're going to go back to your organizations, and you're going to need to know how to talk about these things from a theoretical point of view and a statistical point of view. So why are we even talking about social media anyways, from the highest level? Well, remember that one thing that I told you was the pivot point for this entire program? That one thing is this: the customer demands it. That is the only reason we need as organizations to offer this service. That's it. But when pressed, here are some interesting statistics. We know through studies that are coming out every year, several times a year, that 94% of recruiters use, of all recruiters, guys, all recruiters in the entire universe, 94% of them use social media, they use LinkedIn. That's almost all of them. Statistically, I can say that's every single recruiter. That's a statistically accurate statement, right? Okay. And if we look at this other part, this Facebook part, we know that, well, there's 1.3 billion users of Facebook. It's probably safe to say that most of our customers are using Facebook. Fair? 76% of social media users found their job with Facebook. Why are we not teaching Facebook skills, right? Here's another one. So of all the recruiters, which is all of them, what do they actually do? What are they using LinkedIn to do? They're using LinkedIn to find candidates, to communicate with candidates, and to vet candidates. Now, what does this all mean from a qualitative point of view? Like, let's put some real numbers around this. We're talking 18 million jobs from Facebook, 10 million jobs from LinkedIn. Huge numbers. Very relevant to everything that we do on a daily basis. In fact, this stuff is so important that President Obama himself did a town hall meeting on the campuses of LinkedIn in California to talk about the employment situation.
There's a question.
We have a question? Is there a question?
She answered it.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know what the 8 million, I didn't know what the symbol was for,
Oh, that's Twitter.
yeah, I didn't know.
Yeah.
The symbol.
Twitter. So here we have a situation where we have different types of customers, right? We have job-seeking customers who are demanding this. But we also have employer partners who are demanding this from us as well. So we have this draw from two different, very powerful forces within our organizations. And as Cheryl is going to talk about in just a second here, simply offering a 1-hour LinkedIn how do you click around class was simply not enough to satisfy our customers' demands. So we had to take action. Cheryl's going to talk about how that got started.
I'll talk a little bit about how locally we in the Oregon metro area, we got involved with Joshua and solved the problem. Because everything that you said, that he has just indicated, the numbers, the need, was there. And what we noticed, when in my introduction, I came from a high-tech company into this world, and so I was used to having a lot of high-tech equipment and accessibility at my fingertips. And so that was interesting to come into a real face-to-face environment, which is what I would say our world is. And then the other thing that I noticed is that a lot of my folks, friends from Intel, were also out looking for jobs, and they were using things like LinkedIn, and they were actually doing two things. They were using LinkedIn groups to help find their jobs, and then they were having those LinkedIn groups be affiliated with a physical networking group. So they had kind of combined both of those. So when I was working at WSI, I was it was interesting to me, except for one, for I think the networking group in Beaverton Hillsborough, that there weren't these physical networking groups and supported by kind of a LinkedIn, social media, kind of exchange. And so that was one of the questions I had. And it was apparently some of the questions people in the centers had, because our centers, we have 5 centers, and each of them independently started to develop their own courses around LinkedIn, around Facebook. Mainly LinkedIn was the big one they were going after, but they were doing it on their own. So these were people who were interested and passionate around social media, and they just said, hey, we need this course at our center. I'm going to develop it. Among everything else that I'm doing, right? The other stuff didn't go away. Yeah, you guys know what I mean. But I'm going to develop this course. And so what we found is that it really did fill a gap. There was need and there was interest. But the challenge was the technology changes. And so these courses primarily focused on, okay, how do you set up a LinkedIn account? How do you change it? And so the technology changed, and we felt that we needed to have courses that helped keep up with the technology. And the other thing that we noticed is they were all inconsistent. So if I went to a class in our Beaverton Hillsborough office, it could be totally different than the class at East. And the quality, and there was no way to kind of manage the quality of the class. And so what we did, oh, you have the clicker, yay. So what we did is that we decided to do an RFP process. That's right. And send an RFP out saying we want somebody to come in and develop a class for us system-wide, and we listed what we wanted it to do. It had to certainly develop the curriculum, and the curriculum had to be appropriate and for the job seeker. We also thought at that time, the time that we got in, we did the RFP, there were a lot of people that we'd say were associate's degrees and above, a lot of professional folks looking for work, and we had our traditional, we had resume, we had career exploration, we had the traditional workshops available for them, but we didn't have that extra LinkedIn that they may really need to get noticed, particularly because of the type of job seeker they were. So we wanted to fill that need. That was in the RFP. And we also, the other thing that we wanted it to do is we wanted to have them not only be able to develop a LinkedIn presence or online presence, we also wanted them to be part of a group, a LinkedIn group that could help them participate more actively in the online job search. So we developed the RFP, sent it out, got response, and then we found Joshua. And luckily, Joshua is a local. I mean, he's just outside of Portland, is the author of the Dummies book, which, if you don't have, is a really good book just to have in your reference center. He got the award and has been working with us for the past 2 years? 2 years? 2 years. Developed the course, launched the course, monitors our LinkedIn group, and we're actually starting to develop those LinkedIn groups so that they are more, we have a sector strategy locally, so that we bring some of our sector strategy into that groups and develop them along those lines. I think you're on.
Yeah.
To the passing of that.
So the LinkedIn groups actually, so these things take time with all social media. They're not quick fixes, but what we're seeing now, and just to talk to it, is that we're starting to have a lot more engagement. We're actually getting jobs posted on our LinkedIn groups. And we have subgroups within LinkedIn for technology. And we have jobs posted on that as well. So it's become a really engaging forum for not just our customers, but also our staff and our employer partners to bridge that gap, that skills gap. So when Cheryl contacted me about this program back in 2012, I knew there was going to be some challenges for me coming from outside of the system. The first one was I didn't know what was going on. What are the resource limitations of the center? What was already currently happening, like these one-off LinkedIn classes that each center was offering at the time. I didn't know what those forces were. And so what I decided to do was to do a 3-month discovery phase of the contract. So what we did is I asked Cheryl to recruit 1 or 2 managers from each of the 5 WorkSource Portland Metro centers from around the city, and to bring them into this working group, this focus group, and to spend some time with me over a course of a couple of weeks to figure out what was going on. I needed help from them to figure out what was going on within the system. But also, more importantly, I knew that if I can bring them on board and really get them excited as they go back out to their center, they're now going to be what? Advocates. They're going to be my advocates for this program. So we did 4 meetings, hour-and-a-half-long meetings, and we got more done in these hour-and-a-half-long meetings than most committee work groups get done in a year using a technique that we're actually going to do today. Okay, so you guys came to the right room. You guys came to the right room. We're going to spend the last half hour learning this technique that will completely transform how you guys get work done and build coalitions. Okay, so that's what we have in store for you today. So this is actually a screenshot from we did a Facebook group, and I invited everybody who was in that committee to bring the discussion outside of the committee on an ongoing basis. So I would post an article, send out an idea, they would respond to it, I would get their feedback, and all of their feedback went into the development of this program that I was able to take back and pilot after just a couple of weeks. But we discovered a few important things, right? Things that were unexpected. I thought that having advocates within the center was going to be enough, but it wasn't. I learned a couple of important things in developing this. The first thing was that the 5 centers had very different resources. Some had very large computer clusters, others did not. And we knew there was a huge demand for these classes. So if we were trying to build something that was consistent across all 5 centers, there couldn't be computers. There could not be computers in the classroom because we just did not have a consistent amount of resources to deliver that, okay? So that was our number one resource restriction. How do you teach a social media class with no computers? Challenge number 1. I also learned that we needed to design this curriculum for a very specific segment. We needed to make difficult decisions about who we were designing curriculum for. Okay, and so we needed to study and survey our constituency, basically, to find out who had the biggest need, who is the most underserved population when it comes to, and who could be benefited most when it comes to social media. And then finally, okay, we're not going to teach technology in the classroom. How are we going to teach it? Well, the way we were going to do that is to use frameworks and strategies. Why don't we use our classroom time to teach frameworks and strategies so that there's a coaching situation within the classroom, and then assign homework for the technology training later? And this turned out to be a huge, huge win. The other thing we learned was that we needed to integrate this program into the entire system. It was not good enough to simply offer it in the catalog, have a couple of managers who were advocating for it, and hope that it would just do well. The reality was that we needed support from the highest levels of our organization, director level of the organization, even at the state level, to support this. And what they were able to do with their help is we brought in over 80, how many were at the welcome?
Well, there were 2.
There was 2 with about 50
each, so 180 to 100 people.
The way that our work source works is that for anyone to receive an unemployment benefit, they need to talk to one person, and that person is a welcome person. Okay, so we have a welcome team, and they triage. They look at the customer and they say, what's your situation? What are the services we're going to prescribe to you? And so everybody talks to a welcome person, everybody. And that was actually good news. Through the help of directors, we were able to bring all. We had to break it up into 2 days because we couldn't stop services, right? But over 2 days, we brought every single welcome person in one room and gave them this training. And you saw what happened. As soon as they got that training, they understood, and that was the full integration. That's what happened. So we realized one of the biggest lessons we learned is that to have a successful social media program, you really need to integrate this into all of the other programs. All of the other programs. So as soon as this understanding happened, boom, our attendance really, really started to improve. Okay, so go back to that 2012 experience. I just finished off the focus group, and now I was going to build this curriculum. Well, this is what the curriculum turned out to look like. This is Kara, one of our trainers, that picture I took a couple of months ago. at one of our centers. Now, this program, if it was all up to me, would be a full day, 8 hours with all kinds of documents and resources and fun toys to play with. But we don't have that kind of resources to play with. We have a lot of budget restrictions and technology restrictions. So what we compromised to have were two 2-hour programs: Social Media 1 and Social Media 2. Okay. And no computers in either of those classes. A week-long gap between Social Media 1, 2 hours. They go home. They do the online supplemental stuff if they're confused. They can learn the technology if they have questions. They can contact us through the LinkedIn group, and we'll coach them. And then they come back to Social Media 2. And now we translate that into the world of social media. The medium that we used when they were in these sessions was what? What was the media? Paper and pencil. Because one of the things we recognize in this particular demographic, there's a lot of fear around social media. Do you guys see that? They look like they come into these classes. This is interesting. If you come to one of our classes and look at the faces of our attendees, they're deer in headlights face when they walk in, and they're chill when they walk out. They're like, I got this. That's what we're going for. And then one of the key tools we use to do that is a paper and a pencil. Why? Because they can write their first tweet. They can write their headline. They can count their characters, and then we can coach them. And that really de-escalates this fear that people have around this stuff, particularly with this demographic that we're going to talk about in just a second here. One of the things that we had to decide was who were our demographic. And to make it fun, we gave them names, Willow and Patrick. Okay? These are computer literate, mid-level career professionals, computer savvy, probably already using social media. And here's the thing. This is the psychographic thing. They know what they're doing doesn't work. Applying for jobs en masse does not work anymore. The resume is not getting them callbacks anymore. They are frustrated. And that's what impels them to try something new. That's the majority of the people coming into this. So they're afraid. Yes, they're afraid. That's okay. But they also know they need to do this. And that's really the hook. And so what are these frameworks that I was talking about, right? One of the key frameworks we built this course on is what I call the 3P model: position, polish, and publish. And this is just one of several frameworks that we teach. And by the way, before I go any further, you guys have a card on your desk. You can download this curriculum that we're talking about when you go home. So keep this card, and you can download this whole thing and see exactly what I'm talking about. All the frameworks are in there. So the 3P model, what does this do? It allows our trainers to be career coaches, to engage, and to help people one-on-one make that eye contact without a screen in front of them, causing this barrier. Does that make sense? So, and then they can go home and learn their technology later. And this is a huge relief for our customers as well. Who wants to sit in a class where half the class is faster than you, the other half of the class is slower than you, and you're pulling your hair out?
That's every class I do.
Nobody wants that.
How do I make that capital letter?
How do I make that capital letter? How do I click this? No one wants to teach classes like this. Those are not durable skills. And one of the key requirements we wanted to have were durable skills here. Something that, maybe LinkedIn disappears tomorrow, but they still learn something valuable about how to engage online.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the demographics now of what we found out. These are of the classes that we took. These are our current class demographics, and we expected the population to skew slightly older because they were a professional class, but we were surprised that it skewed as high as it. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Oh, can you hear me now? Okay. I'll try to speak louder. If anybody else, if I talk too fast or I don't talk loud enough, let me know. Try to slow down and talk louder. So what we did find is that we were right. They did skew older, but we were surprised at the number, the percentage that skewed older. Attendance for all of our workshops in Portland metro area skews a little older. They're just more comfortable with the classroom. We're not exactly sure why, but even given that, this was a little bit older, the attendance in this class. The other thing is, we knew when we started, we were aiming at professional, like I said, associate's degree and above, and it actually hit the mark. And part of that is thanks to the welcome team. So what we did in the training, we made it really clear, this class is not for everybody. Yes, it's a universal access system. We give access to anybody who walks through the door, but this particular class may not be the best choice for some of the people coming through the doors. And then for other customers, it's absolutely the right choice. And when you look at the education level, it's telling us that we're hitting that mark. We're getting that right target, and they're getting, and they're attending this class. And that's thanks to that training that Joshua did, and the welcome to really getting that. And then these are some of the customer comments that we got from our. The other thing that we didn't show this one, but the other thing that the other demographic I had before I read this is that it's skewed female. We're not sure why, but it's very interesting to us that when we look at a portion of our total base that's male versus female, that our whole customer base is slightly more male, but 63% of our attendees to this class are female. So they're old, so it's just an interesting fact, and we're not sure why, but interesting. So one of our customers, I had to get over my fear. Now I understand the benefits of digital networking. I'm even applying what I've learned to my company's website. So these are people, we did a survey of all the attendees, all 700 people that attended the social media class before we were working on the white paper, just to find out. And the two comments were, yes, it helped me a lot, and I'm still applying it. So that's the other thing, is people come in, and there's a ramp-up time, particularly depending where they're starting from. And so a lot of their comments were, it was a great class, I'm still applying it, and it's been 3 months. So, that's something we may be considering in the future. How do we help them ramp faster without a heavy touch? Don't know, but the point was they value the content, they're using it, they know they should use it more. Thank you so much for all the valuable information I learned at class last week. Through my increased networking, I was able to find out about a position just as it was being made public. Since then, I was offered the job. My first day will be Wednesday. And I think it's really particularly important when we're talking maybe with that older market segment who already may be struggling a little bit to get noticed. So it's important for them to have to be on social media so they look contemporary and look like they're up with the times. It's important for them to make those connections through social media so they get those interviews and nobody's looking at that online application where they had to fill out the year they graduated from college. So I think that social media really helps people with that in that particular demographic, and that could be one reason why we're seeing an increase there. Those are basically the response that we've gotten, and we've learned a few things along the way. First, targeted services model, and that we've talked about that throughout this conversation is focusing your services. We wouldn't exclude anybody from this class, but we really had a sweet spot, and if we target that sweet spot, we actually help people get jobs faster. Use specialized expertise as appropriate. I don't know about your centers, but we generally, we have really smart people that work in our centers, and we rely on them to do everything all the time. And so going outside the system and ask, expert for us was kind of radical. And, but I would recommend it, given if you have a topic that needs expertise, get the expertise and have them help you. Encourage staff involvement. And this is kind of the balance to the expertise. As Joshua mentioned, when he came in from the outside in, he had to learn a few things. And in fact, when we had those first few meetings, he would suggest something, and people in the center would go, "Oh no, it'll never work." For really good practical reasons, it wouldn't work. That a person from the outside just wouldn't understand. But you need to get that involvement so that you have that balance between outside and inside, and then you come up actually with a better solution. Strategy over technology. So what we learned in the process is we emphasized the job seeker strategy, not the technology, because the technology is going to change. And so we're calling this, we emphasize the durable skills, which is the strategy. So learning how to brand yourself is important whether you have a LinkedIn account or not. LinkedIn account just helps you get the message out there. And then technology is going to change, but once you get in there and adapt it, you're going to learn as it changes. And the last thing we learned is, of course, we just have to assume this. Things change. I mean, we had conversations, things changed between how Joshua had to work with the centers, things changed with the technology. We had some online modules that weren't as successful as we'd like them to be. We're fixing those. So just assume that change is going to happen.
Yeah, this is a program that's not a set and forget. It's not a resume course. It changes. And so when you do implement your social media curriculum, just know that there will be a monthly investment to make sure that the thing stays up to date. Yeah. Go ahead.
I do a resume course and I change it constantly. Very much. But,
Sorry.
No. But so we had, in fact, my resume course is this a safe place where I can speak without fear that someone will think I'm slamming my organization. I'm not. I'm just trying to learn here. I'm a partner. I don't work for the employment department. I'm just a partner. And we now require a skills test called the National Career Readiness Certificate. You guys know what that is? Yeah. We would now require that for someone to attend my workshop. It's a fairly new thing, and my dear staff at the employment department, some of them, they have had words with me. Janet, that's discrimination. Now, I was able to say, okay, I was easy for me to take my own ego out of it because it wasn't my idea, even though I support it. So I could take my own ego out and not take it personally. But anyhow, so I can see that happening. What do you mean this is only open to people with associates or whatever?
Yeah.
That's discrimination.
So to clarify, it's open for everybody.
Okay, yeah.
But I wouldn't go to an ESOL class. How would I benefit from learning?
That's a great argument.
So this is digital literacy.
Right.
And it's appropriate for people who want to learn digital literacy.
We're open to it.
Right? We're not saying it's restricted, but it's open. I think, one of the things that made us squirm a little bit, and I presented this at California Placement Association a couple of months ago, and I said, we have this underserved demographic of mid-level career-ready, computer literate professionals, and someone raised their hand and said, that's an underserved demographic.
It's a what?
Underserved demographic. But the truth is they are. They are. They come into our center. They don't see any relevant, they don't need resume help, they don't need interview help. They've been doing this for 25
Well,
years.
they do need resume help. I just don't think they do.
They don't think they do. But what they do know they need is a social media class, and we so far haven't been able to offer that to them. So by all technical definitions, they are an underserved demographic, and we're simply offering another, let's call it another language class.
I like the way you put that. I mean, I'm totally in favor of it. I like everything.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's a good way I can approach it.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it'll be my idea. I'm a peon. I work directly with customers. I'm not a manager.
The people who work most directly, see, this is, so her comment was, I just work directly with customers. Actually, that's why we do what we do. You are the reason. Working with customers is why we do what we do. And, when I've presented this before, I've had the highest level of directors in the class saying, oh, LinkedIn's not important. No, bear with me. Not important. In the same organization, someone in your position stands up and says, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Do you know how many times a day I'm asked about this stuff? So what we're trying to facilitate here is a dialogue that isn't happening yet. And it's okay. They just don't know. But we know. We know. And so it's our job as social media advocates, that's because what we all are now, is to bring this information to the decision makers so that they can make the right decisions about creating a course like this. Yes?
So, I don't want to sound short-sighted on this, but is this something that, an approach that only works in an integrated model? Because in the state that I work in California, it's broken off by workforce investment boards, so whatever the WIB says, that's what we do. One WIB will say, let's go integrate it. Another WIB will say, no, we don't need it, but those people aren't finding jobs anyway. And it goes like that throughout the state. So the staff can say, I think integration is good, but...
Integration at what level? So we've integrated within our WIB. We're not integrated with the state.
Yeah, well, we are. We are. We're integrated with Oregon Planning. So we are an integrated system locally, and I think it helps being integrated. I don't think it's necessary because I think it's the curriculum that is really the value here. So if there was if within your organization, whatever was not integrated, if there's a component of the curriculum, I think it could work. I think it may not. We were lucky because we had the the state agreed on it, we agreed on it, but I think if you look at the curriculum itself, the content, because you're still trying to get people back to work and you're still trying to give them the tools that are available, then I think you can work it through that way. So I don't think it's a stopper, I just think it makes things a little more difficult.
It's just our web is a little bit.
Well, in California, you have iTrain, right?
In some groups, yes.
Some WIBs use iTrain, which is an open market for courseware. And so this could be a course that shows up as an open market for reimbursement. So, and that would be an integrated model. It's just the WIB, the welcome staff on the ground wouldn't know about it. Right? And so now you have a communication issue. Any other questions before we probably have time for a few more before we go into the exercise? Yeah.
Well, I am a welcome person. I work on the staff of the welcome.
Thank you. Couldn't do it without you.
And I think that it would be really good too to also get a class just on Facebook and one just on Twitter. Because even when you saw the statistics that 18 million or whatever are getting their job more off of Facebook than LinkedIn, because those are the people maybe who don't have the associates or above. So those people too really need to learn what's the most effective way to get jobs on Facebook and or Twitter.
Yes.
Because I think the majority of the people are using those types of ways. And I know it's touched on in the class, but I mean, I think there needs to be an entire class.
Yeah.
An hour or two class on just how do you use Facebook most effectively, how do you use Twitter most effectively, and I think it would be filled up constantly.
Let's talk. No, you're right. So if you think about our demographic, our mid-level career professionals, LinkedIn is the highest leverage tool, but that's what, 20% of our market, our customer base? What happens with the 2-year associate's degree, getting a trade certification? They still need to know these things too, particularly Facebook. And that's a different type of a curriculum. And yeah, that's definitely a viable option as well.
But even with English as a second language, if we have people, of course, that teach that in our office. We have several workshops that teach English as a second language things. But they could even use that because they are speaking in Spanish or Russian or whatever on their Facebook. And there are employers out there that are looking for that too as well.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying it is I think it needs to be often, put out there that it's not just. I mean, it's great when I have professionals in and say, hey, this would be a really great tool for you.
Yes.
Go check it out and see what you may or may not be doing correctly.
Yes.
And that usually they do. I just think that the vast majority of the people would like stuff that could be more common use.
And part of it might be more of the train the trainer, so that we have the core class in social media, which we have, and then we have a train the trainer where we're training people who are ESL instructors, so that they can integrate more of the content into what they're doing,
Yeah.
so that we can get a better kind of better reach throughout the curriculum, and that might be a way to do it more economically. I don't know, but there's ways to probably.
Right. One of the ideas we've been talking about is talking about LinkedIn within the resume class, or talking about Twitter within an ESOL class. So a much more spread out approach. I think it would be virtually impossible to have a LinkedIn approach for everybody. That doesn't work. But if we can create courses that are specific to your demographic needs, then yeah, we can expand. And what we've done here, and in the white paper that you have in front of you, you should take home. This just came out. This is hot off the press. This is a beachhead, right? This is a first step in starting to create an organizational system-wide change, and we're hoping to lead a national movement, right? A national movement to get social media career education to the people who need it the most.